Welcome to Dr. Mary Travelbest's 5 Steps to Solo Travel Guide for people like you who need extra support traveling the world one at a time. I welcome your feedback and travel questions as the Travelbest team creates a travel workbook and a third book, Part C, about solo travel 90 days around the world. In this episode, the FAQ is, my friend Jean asked about recommendations for the best rental car deals. Today's destination is Florence, Italy, Part 1. Today's misstep? Legal troubles. I was caught in Florence without a bus ticket and fined. Travel advice? Bring an umbrella for shade. And now the FAQ. My friend Jean asked for recommendations for the best rental car deals this year. She says, it used to cost more if you picked it up at the airport, but now it's the opposite. She's asking for the best deals, whether it's AAA, Sam's Club, Expedia, Kayak, Booking, etc., Costco. She said they all seem extra high to her. And here's my answer. Yes, the car rental business is doing well these days. I remember when, during COVID-19, I booked a car in Denver for 8 days for $32. No longer is that the case. So the best thing to do is to shop around and keep shopping. Yes, find your best deal. It may take a few, maybe even 30 minutes, but it's worth waiting. I've used all the options mentioned here, plus Turo, which is like Airbnb for cars. They all have pluses, but check to ensure you have the car you need a few days before you travel. I just checked with my Turo for next weekend in Ohio, and the host says the car was in an accident, so it's unavailable. But Turo did not inform me, so I contacted Turo, and they helped me rebook a different car. So expect prices to be high in peak times like summer and holidays, and destinations like Chicago. Consider cutting the number of days you're renting your car. So only for the days you really need it. And for the other days, use public transportation like Uber, Lyft, or subways, buses, or even walking on those days if possible. And now for today's destination, Florence, Italy, Part 1. Have you been to Florence in your mind? I have, and finally, I got to be there in person, solo, with some great intentions, and I got to meet some great people. Now, you could go to a guidebook and learn all about Florence, but it's much better to hear about it from a trusted guide. I'll give you some highlights and some travel challenges, especially for the solo female. I recommend taking tours here, such as a cooking tour, a bike tour, even a city walking tour, so you can make friends and connect with other travelers. My favorite part of Florence is probably mostly just walking around the city neighborhoods and experiencing the flow of the other travelers. And the art galleries, of course. You'll hear more about that in Part 2 of this series. My first night in Florence, Italy, was spent with several roommates in a hostel called My Friend's Hostel. I also stayed at an Airbnb for several nights. My hosts there took me on an afternoon trip to nearby Fiesole. It's a region outside of town. So it got me out of the city and the touristy areas, and I got a great panoramic overview. I visited a church there, and I interacted with kids who were refugees from Ukraine. So I took the train to Florence on July 4th, Independence Day in the USA, and I was feeling a little depressed as my family was all back home and I was here without them. I tripped myself with one wrong step and I fell on the ground hard. I bruised my leg, cut an arm, and had a sore wrist and lower back. I used ice and I rested. But since I wasn't going out that night, I checked out the hostel kitchen for staples. I made a pasta dinner, and eventually 3 other women from the US wandered into the kitchen, so it was dinner for 4. We had some rosé wine and a very simple meal, but it renewed my love for solo travel and inspired me to continue the journey around the world. For the remainder of my Florence stay, I moved into a residential area called Santa Maria Novella near the Arno River. Hassan and Maria, a couple in their 80s, were my hosts. She paints, so this felt like living in an art gallery. The paintings on the walls were just gallery worthy. It was amazing. The Piazza Michelangelo's sunset was stunning and walkable from my residence. So every night there's a party here. I met a couple of gals, Rebecca from New Zealand and Nora from Madrid. We hung out. There was music everywhere, including live concerts. A few notes about my travels here that I wrote down. No air conditioning, fresh air. No pain from the fall 2 days ago. And now let's talk a little bit about the sights to see. Pitti Palace and the Boboli Gardens. The palace reminded me of Versailles, just outside of Paris, France. It was grand and impactful. The gardens, though, needed some love and attention. The aquariums and botanical gardens were unique, and I had a picnic lunch by myself in the Rose Garden. The exhibits not to miss here include famous works by Raphael, like Madonna of the Chair, the portrait of Agnolo Doni, and La Velata. Check out the Palatine galleries, too. On my next visit, I will see the Bargello Museum, which has works by Donatello that I missed this visit. So for food, I had pizza at Gusta's. Francesco served my prosciutto and margarita pizza. I brought it over to Monaco at the hostel, and she was very happy. You can check the show notes for more details and listen to Florence, Italy, Part 2 next. And now for today's misstep. I was caught without a bus ticket, and I was fined 42.5 euros. On my final day in Florence, 5 minutes before arriving at the train station, I was fined by the police for not having a valid ticket for my fare. I paid the fine. I could have fought it, but they did not want to listen to my excuses, and I did not want to miss my train. I paid, and I'll do better next time. Learn from my lessons and carry a valid ticket all the time. Now for today's travel advice, bring an umbrella for shade. The umbrella is why I stayed mostly cool and comfy outside when I was in Italy, even when the temperatures were in the 90s in July. A UV umbrella cools you down by between 8 and 15 degrees Fahrenheit, and the best results are for exposures of 30 minutes or more. Without the UV blocking in the umbrella, your results could be diminished, but it's still better than no umbrella. I want to bring you meaning to your future travels, so sign up for my newsletter and let's connect on all my social media and websites, including TikTok. Find the 5 Steps to Solo Travel. It's a series on Amazon. And again, look for the show notes for lots of details. Be sure to write a review for the podcast. Thank you so much.
What's on your travel bucket list? Tell the doctor and her team of women who travel the world seeking the very best. Dr. Travelbest, that is.